This is just a common rail injection. I will just give you 2 or 3 slides of common rail diesel engines, and then I'll talk about the spark ignition engines. So this is the high pressure fuel pump which is supplying high pressure fuel to common rail. So common rail is nothing but a storage tank which stores the fuel at high pressure, and from there you can see that 4 injectors are connected. These are the 4 injectors. Okay, so that means these 4 injectors will now get the fuel at same pressure, and these are all solenoid controlled. Solenoid control means you give them a pulse, and as long as you are supplying a square pulse, it will remain open. So if you give the same pulse to 4 cylinders, 4 injectors, you will put in exactly the same quantity of the fuel in 4 cylinders. Earlier in mechanical systems, it is impossible to have exactly same 4 injectors, and all 4 injectors will get slightly different fuel quantity. And therefore, once you have this, then what will happen? This injector will put in more amount of fuel, this injector will put in less amount of fuel, this will be slightly more, this will be slightly more. There will be different quantities. And when the engine burns, one will be producing more torque, the other one will be producing less torque. And then when the cylinders have imbalance in torque production, it will lead to twisting of the crankshaft, and it will lead to vibrations in the engine. Okay. In CRDI system, you have exactly the same quantity going in, because it is very easy for you to control the pulse width of the which is going to the injector. Okay, so you are putting in the same quantity, the pressure is same, it is connected to the pipe. When the pressure is same, injector opening duration is same quantity of fuel will go, and therefore there will be no torsion in the crankshaft. Therefore the noise and vibrations from CRDA engines are much less. In fact, if you are asked to sit in a old Ambassador car having mechanical fuel injection system, and you are asked to travel 500 kilometers, it will be very painful. Your back will start hurting. If it is a Scorpio or some such CRDI car, it will be a smooth ride. So technology has actually made the vehicles very, very comfortable. So unlike in conventional diesel engine, the fuel is fed through a common rail and high pressure is maintained. It allows the fuel to combine with air much more efficiently. It features high pressure fuel rail feeding individual solenoid valve, as opposed to low pressure fuel feed pump to feeding each injector. So this is the schematic. Actually there are many sensors. This include crankshaft speed sensor, cam position speed sensor, accelerator pedals, boost temperature, air temperature, coolant temperature, oil temperature. All this data is going to electronic control unit, and this electronic control unit is connected to a key, so it gets activated only when key is put in. Okay, and then what you see, this is the fuel tank. Okay, so from the fuel tank, the fuel is going to the fuel pump. Okay, and here the pressure is being increased, and the increased pressure fuel goes to this common rail. Okay, and here you have the pressure limiter valve, and here you have rail pressure sensor. So rail pressure sensor will give feedback to the ECU and tell what is the pressure. If this pressure is more than what is desired, or then what will happen, this ECU will give instruction to this pressure limiter valve, and the pressure limiter valve will open until the pressure is what is demanded, and then the fuel will be returned through this and it will come back to the tank. Okay, here the high pressure will go to the solenoid valve. Each solenoid is connected to ECU, so it gives the instruction for how long it is to be open. So the fuel is injected, and some fuel which is not used actually comes back to the tank, so fuel returns also. Okay, some fuel is injected, some fuel returns back. Okay, so this is how it works actually. I will talk about this in detail in the ME 691 on engine management. That course is just only about fuel injection systems. So only gasoline and diesel fuel injection systems, 40 lectures. So you will be masters of the fuel injection systems in that course. So working of the CRDI, solenoid valve makes possible for fine electronic control over the injection timing and the amount in high pressure. Then it is possible to do pilot injection. This is uses microprocessor, so it can do calculation of exactly how much quantity needs to be injected at every load. So the driver has pressed some pedal. Depending on that, it will calculate what is the power required. For that, it will calculate how much of the fuel quantity that need to be injected at what pressure. It will calculate how much should be the injection duration and how much should be the pilot quantity, how much should be the post injection, and exactly like that it will give pulses to the solenoid injector. So all that calculation is done in the ECU microprocessor, electronic control. Okay, it leads to least emissions and least possible wastage of the fuel. CRDI engines are now extremely efficient. They are much more efficient than mechanical fuel injection system based vehicles that we used to operate 20-30 years back. So it's an intelligent way of controlling a diesel engine. It uses modern computer systems. So these are ECUs are very small, but it has same processor which are used in computers. It helps improve the power, performance, and reduce the harmful emissions. It is known by various names: CRDE, Dicor, Turbojet, DIDIS, TDI. So everything refers to the same common rail direct injection systems. It uses common rail, which is like a single rail or fuel channel which contains diesel at high pressure. It's called a common rail because a single pump compresses the fuel. Okay, one pump connected to all the injectors, and one single rail that contains the compressed fuel, spray directly into the engine cylinder on the compression stroke using very high fuel injection pressure. Advantages: it's most efficient, improves the power, improves the fuel economy, performance of the engine by managing it in a much better way, response is fast. Okay, demand response is very fast. You demand and immediately it starts injecting more fuel. Efficiency is great, reduces the engine noise, it reduces the emissions quite a bit, and reduce vibration levels to a considerable extent. So these are all the plus, and that's why diesel engines, if you look at most of the diesel engines produced today, CRDI by default is the technology. There is no other technology in modern diesel engines other than cheap engines which are like 20,000-50,000 rupees kind of engines. Every engine of automotive mostly is using CRDI. Coming to the fuel injection technology for gasoline engine, so this technology is called multi-point port fuel injection technology, and this was developed in 1980s and commercialized in 1980s. And here the idea is very simple. Here also you have a common rail. Okay, but this common rail is at a relatively much lower pressure, say 3 bar or 5 bar. That's all, and it is connected to an injector. At this, where this injector is injecting the fuel, not in the cylinder, but in the manifold. So this manifold, you have atmospheric pressure. If it is naturally aspirated, even if it is boosted, it will be 1.52 bar maximum. So it injects the fuel in the manifold, and then when the valve opens, it takes the fuel and mixture in. So this is the overall how the MPFI engine looks like. Let's talk about it. Multi-point injection systems. The pressure regulator has an inlet connection from the fuel rail and outlet that lets the fuel returns to the tank. A control diaphragm and pressure spring determines the exposed opening of the outlet and the amount of fuel that can return. So the strength of the pressure spring determines fuel pressure in the fuel rail and keeps it at a fixed value. Okay, so you maintain basically one fuel injection pressure. However, the pressure in the intake manifold varies considerably depending on changes in the engine speed and load, because turbocharging requirement also changes depending on the load and speed, right? So the pressure drop across the injector must be taken into account. For any injection duration, if the fuel is held at constant pressure, then the manifold pressure varies, and so does the amount of fuel delivered. This means that the fuel pressure must be held constant above the manifold pressure. So what it means is essentially that in the manifold there will be some pressure, either it is naturally aspirated or boosted pressure. Your injection pressure should always be higher than that. Then only you will be able to inject the fuel. This is done by sealing the spring housing of the pressure regulator and letting it sense the manifold pressure via a connecting hose. And then when the manifold pressure alters, fuel pressure will also alter. more uniform fuel air mixture will be supplied to each cylinder, hence the difference in power developed of each cylinder is minimum. Here also you see the pressure is maintained constant, there is a common rail, and this injector is also operated by solenoid, which is given square pulses by the ECU. So therefore here also you will have same positive point. If it was connected by a carburetor, see for example, if you had a carburetor here, okay, imagine this does not exist. If there was a carburetor here, and if this carburetor is injecting the fuel, introducing the fuel, in the carburetor, not all fuel will evaporate. There will be some droplets. So now that droplets are coming here, you see they will turn in this direction. So do you think that all 4 cylinders will get the same strength of the mixture? The answer is no. The extreme cylinder, the droplets will keep traveling unless they are forced. So the central cylinders will get leaner mixture, and the extreme cylinders will get more number of droplets. And therefore the mixture in these 2 cylinders will be rich, and in these 2 cylinders the mixture will be lean. And once that happens, these 2 cylinders will be operating slower, these 2 cylinders will be operating faster, instantaneous speed. Of course they are on the same shaft, so ultimately the speed has to be the same. But these 2 will create a drag. So they will be the driving cylinder and these will be dragging cylinders. So it will give twisting in the crankshaft, and that will give rise to vibrations in the engine. So once you do MPFI, this problem is completely eliminated, and therefore power developed by each cylinder, difference in the power developed by each cylinder will be low. Each cylinder will develop same power and they will not be dragging. Vibrations therefore will also be very less. Okay, there is no need to crank the engine twice or thrice in case of cold start, because in the cold start what you will do, you are injecting the fuel very close to the intake valve, not way ahead. You know, if you apply a carburetor will be far from the cylinders. Okay, and during the cold start there will be no evaporation. Whereas in this case you are injecting the fuel right next to the intake valve. So when you start cranking the engine, the cylinder will get fuel air mixture in case of port fuel injection. It will not do so in case of carburetor engine. Carburetor engine 2-3 cranks have to be taken. So no need of cranking the engine twice or thrice in case of cold starting, as happens in case of carburetor system. Immediate response. So if you suddenly accelerate or deaccelerate, this engine will respond faster, because you see how the carburetor works based on the difference in pressure. It's a mechanical signal, it travels slower. Whereas port fuel injection system, demand, as soon as you apply the demand, how the signal will travel? Electrically. Electricity travels much faster than mechanical signals, pressure signals. So its response will be slow. As soon as you put more demand, all the calculations will done quickly and it will open the injector more, and immediately you will get more fuel being injected in the cylinder, and therefore its response will be much faster. Mileage of the vehicle also improves. It's more accurate. Fuel air mixture is applied by the injection system. As a result, complete combustion takes place. This leads to effective utilization of fuel and hence lower emission levels. So basically the amount of fuel that needs to be injected per cycle per cylinder is calculated based on the method of determining the airflow rate. Okay, so you determine how much is the airflow rate and how much fuel should be injected in each cylinder. And there are 3 systems that are developed for it. First is called speed density system. That means the speed and density of the air are the primary inputs to the ECU, electronic control unit. Second is, this is called D-Jetronic system. This is the first version of the MPFI system, first generation. The second generation is air fuel meter. So here you are putting the density and speed. How do you measure the density? By measuring the pressure and temperature of the air. Okay. So airflow meter is in which you are measuring the airflow directly. Okay, you are not worried about speed and density system. Airflow meter is used to measure the airflow directly. This is the next generation system, which is called L-Jetronic or hot wire air mass flow meter. Third system, this is a parallel system. This is the most advanced. This is a parallel system where you have a mechanical port fuel injection system. These two are electronic fuel injection system. This is mechanical fuel injection system. Here also you have airflow based metering system. This is called K-Jetronic system. Okay. So what is Jetronic? Jetronic is a trade name of a fuel injection technology for automotive petrol engines, which was developed by Bosch in 1960 onwards. And Bosch licensed the concept to many automotive manufacturers. In fact, all the automotive manufacturers now use this Bosch licensed technology. There are several variations of this technology offering technological development and refining. So first is the speed density system, called D-Jetronic system. Okay, this was developed between 1967 and 1976. It was used till in several countries. It was used till early 2000s. Okay, so along with the fuel, D means Druck in German. Bosch is a German company. So Druck means pressure. Okay, so inlet manifold pressure or vacuum is measured using a pressure sensor and connected to the intake manifold in order to calculate the duration of fuel injection pulses. So you are measuring the inlet manifold pressure, and based on that you are calculating the time for which the fuel injection valve should open. Originally this was called Jetronic systems, but later on it was called D-Jetronic because next versions came, so they wanted to distinguish one Jetronic from the other, so later on they called it D-Jetronic. Okay, and the next version that came was L-Jetronic. So D-Jetronic was the precursor of the more modern common rail systems, as it has constant pressure fuel delivery to the injector and pulse injection, albeit in grouped form. Grouped form means if you have 6 injectors, 3 will be operating one time, another 3 will be operating another time. Okay, this is rather than sequential, or I'll show you what is the difference. So Bosch D-Jetronic system is used by many companies, and these are some of the old versions of the vehicles. Of course, now many of them may not be available in the market. Okay, but this was used, very popular system in the immediately after the carburetors were phased out. So please understand, this is the D-Jetronic system. Please understand this very clearly. I will explain this figure in very detailed manner. Please understand this. This is the piston. Okay, this is the water jacket, cooling water jacket. Okay, and this is the valve. This is the intake manifold. Okay, this is the place from where all the, if there's a 4-cylinder, so basically the union of all manifolds. Okay, and this is the pipe connected between the union and the intake air system. Here let's look at this. This is the fuel tank. Okay, so from the fuel tank the fuel goes into the fuel pump. Okay, fuel pump is going to supply the fuel at high pressure to fuel filter, and from there the fuel will go to fuel pressure regulator. So fuel pressure regulator maintains the pressure in the pipeline, and then from there this injection valve is connected, and then this injection valve is connected. And if it is a 4-cylinder, so for all 4 cylinders this is only one valve which is connected in the union, but for every cylinder there will be one separate valve. Okay, so that means in a 4-cylinder engine there will be 5 valves, one common and one for each cylinder. Okay, understood? Now you see here, this opening and closing has to be controlled. This also opening and closing has to be controlled. What you have here is the electronic control unit. Electronic control unit is nothing but microprocessor. The way it functions is, it has several inputs. Inputs from where? Sensors. Different sensors are giving it input, and then it has some code embedded in it. Okay, so depending on the inputs, it will do all the calculations, whatever is fed out according to that program, and then it will take decisions, and those decisions have to be implemented by actuators. It will actuate few devices. That's the ECU. Now you see this ECU is connected to the pump. So when this pump will be operated is controlled by the ECU. Okay, this is the jacket temperature. So jacket temperature tells you in case of a cold starting, this will be a low temperature. So this will give the signal to the ECU. As the engine starts, this temperature will start rising, and then ECU will know that now my water jacket temperature is on. Okay? Then it has to measure the pressure. As I told you that the system works on the manifold pressure. So this is the manifold union. From there, there is a pressure sensor. So this pressure value is also given to the ECU. Okay? And then this is the throttle valve. Throttle valve is connected to a throttle valve switch, and that is also connected to the ECU. What does the throttle valve means? Accelerator. So demand of the driver, whether he needs more power, less power, is known to ECU. Okay? Then the intake air is coming here. Temperature of the intake air is also given as an input to the ECU. Okay? There is an ignition distributor. Ignition distributor, what does it tell? Which engine is going to fire? Which cylinder is going to fire? That information is also available to the ECU. And then ECU is connected to a battery, because microprocessor needs some power source. That's the battery. Okay? And then there is a thermo time switch which is connected. Then what it needs to actuate. What is the function of the ECU? Ultimately, we are interested in giving the pulse to the injector solenoid. So that's the actuator. So the ECU is going to control every individual injector and also this start valve. Okay? So now you see, when the engine is cold, the information from when the engine is cold and you want to start the engine, what do you need to do? You need to enrich the mixture, right? You need to provide more than what is desired. How do you provide? So when you just starting, this valve will obviously give whatever it is supposed to give in normal condition. Extra fuel is provided by this start valve. So if the temperature here is low, based on that it actuates this start valve. Start valve provides that extra amount of fuel. Fuel air mixture gets vaporized here. More fuel is added for every cylinder, and then the engine will start. Once the engine starts, water jacket temperature will warm up, and therefore the ECU will know that okay, now my engine has started, it has warmed up, let me stop this. So after 20-30 seconds, there will be no supply from the start valve. There will be only supply from injection valve, depending on what is the throttle, depending on what is the speed. So this is going to control the load, this is going to control the speed. Calculations are done here. Okay? Now this pressure regulator valve, you see, if the pressure is higher than desired, then what will happen? The fuel has to come back. So this fuel comes back to the tank. No fuel is wasted. Okay? Have you understood this DJ-tronic system? So let me quickly go through this DJ-tronic system. Airflow calculations are based on speed and manifold pressure. Okay? You basically, in an engine, if you increase the speed, how much will be the volumetric flow rate? Okay? And the manifold pressure and the air temperature. So you would know what is the density. So that is why it is called speed density system. Okay? Electrically developed pump delivers the fuel through the filter, and basically once you know the speed and the density, you will know how much mass of the fuel you are taking in, what kind of air fuel mixture you want to put in, how much fuel should be injected, and therefore for injecting that particular quantity of fuel, you know what is the pressure set in the system, so you would know how much should be the pulse duration, and for that time that calculation will be done in the microprocessor, and for that time the injection valve will be opened. Okay? And the pressure regulator means the pressure in the line at a fixed value. which is usually relative to the manifold pressure, which maintains a constant fuel pressure across the injectors. And then there are branch lines and excess fuel return lines, and then inducted air passes through the air filter, past the throttle plate to the intake manifold. This is the injector. You see, injector is very simple. The fuel is coming in, and there is a solenoid valve here. So once it is charged, it will pull the needle valve, and once the needle valve is pulled a little bit, opening will be almost like 0.2 to 0.5 millimeter only. But then this opening will make some way of the fuel, and from here, from the pintle, the fuel will be injected. Okay. And once the solenoid discharges, there will be a spring which closes it. So it's a normally closed valve which is opened only when solenoid is charged. So it's an electromagnetically actuated fuel valve. Okay. So as I said, the injectors are actually grouped here. So suppose it's a 6-cylinder engine. So 3 and 3 injectors will be grouped in one go, and there will be cold start injector only, which will be activated only if the cylinder is cold. So there is a fuel tank, there is a fuel pump, there is a fuel filter, and then here you have the fuel regulator, and this is connected to three injectors on one side, 3 injectors on the other side, and a cold start injector. Okay, I think I have explained this already. Let me go to the L-Jetronic system. So basically in the D-Jetronic system, we are calculating the airflow by finding out the speed and the density of the air. Now if the engine wears out or if there are deposits, it cannot take that into account. So here, so if older the engine becomes, more inaccurate fuel injection you will have in case of a D-Jetronic engine. In order to avoid this, what is done is that you want to measure the flow rate, because that will take care of all the deposits and wear and whatever. You are actually measuring what is the air flow rate, and accordingly you are putting the fuel quantity. So everything else remains same here except this part. Okay, this is the throttle valve, this is the ECU, this is the distributor, battery, fuel pump, fuel injector, throttle switch, thermotime switch, injection valve, start valve. Everything is same except this part, airflow sensor. The function of the airflow sensor is, there is a plate which is flexible. Okay, if there is more flow rate, this plate will move more in this direction, and this will be converted to voltage signal and given to the ECU. So now you are directly measuring what is the mass flow rate of the air. So this is called L-Jetronic system. Okay, this is another example. This is just animation. This is the start, cold start injection here, and this is just the injector. Rest everything is same. This is the airflow meter. Okay. So in L-Jetronic system, it uses an airflow meter to measure the airflow directly, which is placed upstream of the throttle. To meter measured the force by the flowing air stream on the plate as it is displaced, and it provides voltage proportional to the airflow. Basically, if there is more airflow, the plate will bend more and it will give a higher voltage signal. If the airflow rate is less, it will give lesser voltage. So the advantage is that there is direct compensation for tolerance, combustion chamber deposit buildup, wear or change in valve adjustment, because all these are going to affect the airflow, and now you are directly measuring the airflow rather than depending on the density and speed of the engine. Depending on the volumetric efficiency on speed and exhaust back pressure, these are already automatically accounted for, and therefore there is less acceleration arrangement required. There is improved idling stability. There is lack of sensitivity to the system, to the EGR, since only fresh airflow is measured. So here, the working principle is that mass flow rate to each cylinder is proportional to the rate of mass flow into the induction system, which is measured by the airflow meter divided by the speed. So whatever is the mass flow rate coming in, you divide it by the number of cycles, and then in one cylinder how much will be the air coming in. Okay, MA is the mass going into one cylinder, MA dot is the mass flow into the system measured by the airflow meter, N is the speed. So this will be proportional to MA by N. Of course, if you want to make it equal, you have to also divide it by number of cylinders. That's why it is just a proportional sign here. Okay, so this is the main principle, and I think this is same as what I showed you earlier. There's nothing new here. Let me talk about mechanical system, K-Jetronic. So D-Jetronic is more primitive electronic control system, MPFI system. L-Jetronic is more advanced MPFI system. It measures the airflow rate directly rather than depending on the speed and temperature and pressure. Okay, and then you have a mechanical system. So here in mechanical system there is no ECU. ECU is gone. So now here you see you have a tank, electric pump, fuel accumulator, fuel filter, and then this is going to all the valves. Okay, and here the air is coming in, and there is an airflow sensor. Okay, so the air, when the air flows, what happens is more and more this will lift upward. When it lifts upward, this is going to, there is a slit arrangement here. So what it will do is it will supply, there are slits, each injector will have one slit. So if there are 4 injectors here, it will have 4 slits. If it is 6 injectors, 6 slits. More opening, more slit opening. So more flow of the fuel will go in. Okay, so this is the airflow sensor, which is actually, which is also acting like a fuel distributor, and there is a primary pressure regulator. So primary pressure regulator means the regulator that we had here, the pressure regulation is done here, and the fuel comes here. Here in the first 2 systems, the pressure is maintained at 2.7 to 3 bar. In this system, you maintain the pressure at 5 bar. Okay, so you understood how the quantity governing is done. So this is the K-Jetronic mechanical system. There is no ECU, and there is only one airflow sensor here. Okay. The mechanical airflow based metering system, and it's a continuous injection system. There is no opening and closing. The injector will continuously keep injecting the fuel. Air is drawn through the air filter, past the airflow sensor, past the throttle valve into the intake manifold, and into the individual cylinders. Fuel is sucked out of the tank by a roller fuel cell pump and through the accumulator and the fuel oil distributor, fuel distributor. So this is the sequential injections. As I mentioned to you, there are 2 sets of injectors. Suppose it's a 6-cylinder engine. So 6-cylinder engines means there will be, suppose this is the inlet valve opening for each cylinder. Okay, this is for cylinder number 5. So this is from 0 degree to 720 degree, and basically this is like entire cycle. This should come here. So this part and this part is exactly same, just to make it simple. So you can see when you fold this, it comes here. This is the spark timing. Each cylinder will be sparking at a different time, because they should provide the power in a sequence. Why in a sequence? So that your imbalance, force imbalance is minimum and the weight of the flywheel is kept to a minimum, right? That is why not all cylinders are in compression at one time or combustion at one time. They are sequenced. Okay, so therefore you see this is the spark timing, and these 3 cylinders, the injection group opens for a very small duration. 4, 2 and 6 they open at one time, and 1, 3 and 5 open at one time. So you see when this injection is taking place, actually the intake valve is open, but when this injector opens, this valve opens, the fuel is already accumulated. When this opens, the fuel is accumulated for a long time. Okay, the advantage of this is that you don't need too much of processing speed. You just are treating everything as 2 injectors. So the microprocessor that you need not be very powerful. If you want to operate each injector separately, it is possible, but only thing is that your microprocessor has to be more powerful. Okay, For example, in a 6-cylinder engine, 2 groups of 3 injectors may be used. Injection of each group is timed to occur while the inlet valves are closed or just starting to open. The other group of injectors inject 1 crank angle revolution later. It's a 4-stroke engine. Sequential injection timing when the phasing of each injection pulse relative to intake valve lift profile is same. That is another option. This is the electric fuel pump. So it's a roller cell pump. Okay, the fuel comes in from here. It's a roller cell. It's compressed, and at high pressure it comes out of this. So it's a very simple, almost maintenance-free electric fuel pump. And this is the airflow sensor. You can see this when the airflow takes place. This lifts up, and this lifts this device. Okay. And when this device is lifted, it opens the slits and controls the quantity of fuel that is being injected in cage electronic system. Okay, superchargers and turbochargers. Now you see superchargers and turbochargers are integral part of the modern engines, whether they are gasoline engines or whether they are diesel engines or heavy construction machines. Any heavy engine, whether it is gasoline or diesel, ships, locomotive, each type of engine uses turbocharger. So basically there are 2 classifications of the engine. One is the naturally aspirated engine, the other one is turbocharged engine or charged engine. Okay. So naturally aspirated means you take the intake air at atmospheric pressure. Okay. And charged engine means you try to put in extra pressure. Take the air in at higher pressure. When you take the air in at higher pressure, you are able to put in more amount of air. So the way we are going to discuss is, we are going to discuss the basic difference in working between supercharger and turbochargers. Then we will discuss the turbochargers, followed by discussion in superchargers, control systems, etc. And then we will be discussing the difference, comparison between superchargers and turbochargers. So as we all know that the power output of an engine, it really depends on how much fuel you can put into the engine in a cycle. More amount of fuel you put in an engine cycle, more power you can get. But more amount of fuel also means that you have to put in more amount of air in order to get the complete combustion. Okay. So the power output of an engine strongly depends on the amount of air that you are able to put in the engine and utilize in the process of combustion. Okay. So generally, if you want to increase the power output, it is essential that you increase the amount of air that you are taking in. And there are 3 methods that are normally followed for increasing the air quantity inside the engine. First is increasing the piston displacement, and that means if you want more power output, you have a larger cylinder. Once you have a larger cylinder, obviously you will have more air coming in, you will be able to put in more amount of fuel, and you will be able to generate more power. So that means you increase the physical size of the cylinder. Okay. But that, when you increase the physical size of the cylinder, obviously the power output will increase. Smaller engine will give you lesser of power output, bigger engine will give you more power output, but at the same time the weight and the size of the engine will also increase. Okay. So this is the downside. So you can increase the size of the engine, which increases the weight of the engine, and then it will have some cooling issues as well. Second thing that you can do is you can run the engine at faster speed. Suppose you are running at 1000 RPM, now you can run the same engine at 2000 RPM. So obviously it will give you twice the power output, right? But then when you increase the power output, what happens is that the friction and wear also increases, because the piston speed will increase. So friction of the engine will increase, mechanical losses will increase, and wear and tear of the engine will also increase. So engine will not really last very long if you continue to run it at very fast speed. I will just give you one simple example. You must have seen Formula 1 racing cars, right? Formula 1 racing cars, they are small engines, but they run at very fast speeds. Okay. So they are able to give you very high power output, and they are turbocharged and supercharged. Okay. But then if you look at the life of the engine,
It's just one race and then you have to throw away the engine. Okay. So, in a real life situation, when you have a personal car, you cannot say that after every 100 kilometers I am going to change the engine. So, this solution is also not really a very, very feasible solution. The third solution for increasing the amount of air that we take in is that somehow we increase the density of the air. So, if we are able to increase the density of the air, we are able to put in more amount of mass of the air into the combustion chamber in one engine cycle, and without increasing the piston displacement, without increasing the engine speed, we are still able to put in more amount of air, and therefore, we are able to generate more amount of power, because we are now able to put in more amount of fuel in the same engine cycle. So, this allows greater mass of the charge to be inducted at the same volume, and therefore, it will produce more power output. So, these are the three methods, and out of this seems to be most feasible. So, what is a supercharger? So, supercharger is nothing but it is connected to the engine crankshaft with the help of a belt. You know all the V belt drives. So, on the engine drive shaft you have a V belt and supercharger is connected to it. So, its pulley makes the supercharger spin. So, when the engine rotates, the supercharger also spins. Okay? And what that does is, it is nothing but a compressor. So, the air that is being taken in, it uses the engine power output, some power goes into running the compressor, and what is output? High pressure, high temperature air, high pressure and high temperature air. So, more amount of mass comes in, you can choose to put in the high pressure and high temperature air in the engine directly, but then since it is high pressure and high temperature as well, the density is still not going to be very much high. So, what you do is, it will be more beneficial if you make it high pressure, low temperature, and in order to do that, what you have to do is, you have to pass the air through something called intercooler. Intercooler is nothing but just like a radiator, it is like a heat exchange device, but it is, in case of radiator, it is air to water heat exchange and finally air to air heat exchange. But in this, sorry, water to air heat exchange, in case of intercooler, it is air to air heat exchange. Okay. So, so when the supercharger spins, forces the air into the engine, supercharger spins only when the engine spins. So, this is one small point that one should note. Then smaller is the supercharger, higher boost the engine will receive. However, this has a downside. The supercharger is vastly limited by its efficiency, it is not very efficient. Okay, supercharger is not very efficient. Since the engine drives the supercharger, it needs to use engine's power to develop extra horsepower. So, by boosting you develop extra horsepower, but you are also drawing in some amount of power from the shaft to drive the supercharger. So, this is one point that needs to be kept in mind, and then the last point is that suppose you over boost it. Boosting, let me define this terminology, boost. Boost is, what is boost? Not the Horlicks boost, okay, that is also some kind of a boost. Boost means that, you know, suppose you are operating in naturally aspirated mode. So, that naturally the air that is being taken in is at atmospheric pressure. Any pressure beyond that atmospheric pressure is called boost. Any pressure that you are able to generate because of the supercharging or turbocharging is called boost. For example, if the intake air pressure is 1 bar, it will be called naturally aspirated engine. Suppose the intake air pressure is now increased to 1.5 bar using either the supercharger or turbocharger, then the boost will be called 0.5 bar. Okay. So, that is called boost. So, suppose you over boost, you put in more pressure compared to what the system can really desires, it will push hot air into the engine, it is connected with, it will lead to numerous issues in the engine. What are those issues? We will discuss. But over boosting is also not a desirable phenomenon. Now, let us talk about turbocharger. What is turbocharger? So, turbocharger is a word which can be split into two words. One is turbo, the other one is charger. Charger means what? Compressor, and turbo means what? Turbine. So, basically it is nothing but a combination of a turbine and a compressor, that is what is turbocharger. So, turbochargers are similar to superchargers in functionality, both are doing the same job, that is boosting the engine. So, this also does the same thing, but the main difference here is that here it is not connected to the engine shaft, it is not drawing any power from the engine shaft. So, how does it operate? It operates in a very simple manner. You know, the engine, when you look at the engine exhaust gas is still very hot, and it is higher than 1 atmospheric pressure in most cases. Okay. So, still it is pressurized and higher pressure and higher temperature. So, once you pass it through a turbine where this heat and the pressure can be utilized, you will be able to generate some shaft power output. So, on the same shaft, if you connect another compressor, the compressor will be able to run. Okay. So, the turbine, what is coming in turbine is hot exhaust gas, what is going out of the turbine is a relatively colder atmospheric pressure exhaust gas or close to atmospheric pressure exhaust gas. In the compressor side, you have atmospheric air at atmospheric temperature coming in, what goes out is higher pressure, higher temperature intake air, fresh air going out. Okay. So, supercharger, but it is far more efficient. Why it is efficient? Because it does not utilize any power output from the crankshaft, engine crankshaft, and its boost is not determined by the engine speed, okay, but the vehicle's exhaust gases. So, if there is more hotter gases coming in, it will be able to provide you more boost. If it is the exhaust gas is relatively colder, it will not give you so much of boost. So, when you start the engine right from cold, there will be a problem, because now once you start the engine, the exhaust gases do not become really very hot, because everything is cold. So, the boost, it takes time for turbocharger to pick up the speed. And also, by the way, if you look at the turbochargers, these are small devices for a car, okay, not really very big. What is the speed at which they operate? Do you have any idea? Engine typical speed, what is the RPM on the engine? 3000, 5000 max. What is the speed on the turbocharger? 50,000 to 200,000. So, it is a really fast device, and that is how it is able to generate lot of pressure. Okay. And so, it is a centrifugal kind of a compressor. I will talk to you about, there are many other designs, but centrifugal is one major most popular design for the compressor of the turbocharger. Okay. So, the boost is not determined by the engine speed, but by the vehicle's exhaust gas. The exhaust gases run through the turbine housing, causing the compressor wheels to force and compress the intake air into the engine. So, let us see turbocharger first. So, turbocharger, you know, turbocharger is basically a centrifugal compressor driven by a turbine, as I mentioned to you, which is run by exhaust gases coming out of the engine. The compressor used in the construction compresses the air which is about to enter the engine at high pressure. So, basically compressor is going to increase the pressure of the intake air. With increasing pressure, the weight and amount of fuel entering the same space in the engine can also be increased, and therefore, the power output can also be increased. Simple, right. In this way, the combustion of the fuel is more efficient inside the combustion chamber and eventually result in greater performance of the vehicle for the same displacement of the engine. So, now suppose you have 1 liter engine, you 40 kilowatt, you boost it, the same engine will be able to give you 55 kilowatt. So, more power, more torque will be now available from the same engine. Suddenly, the engine becomes very young and strong, right. So, that is one positive thing. For example, if you put 30% more fuel in the same engine cylinder, the burning of the fuel will provide 30% extra power at the same time. Okay. So, basically boosting is going to give you more torque and more power output from the same engine. You do not have to change the engine with a bigger engine. Same small engine will be able to give you extra power. Now, if you look at how does it work really. So, you have an engine, suppose I talk about diesel engine, okay. Diesel engine has a compression ratio of 17 or 18, right. So, now if the intake air comes at 1 bar, it is compressed by a compression of 17 and 18, it is almost adiabatic compression. Suppose at the end of the compression, you have a pressure of the order of 20-25 bar. Suppose you boost the air from 1 bar to 1.3 bars or 1.5 bar. Now, the pressure at the end of the compression will be how much? Instead of 20 bar, it may be 30 bar. Now, you put in more amount of fuel because more amount of air is available. So, you put in more amount of fuel. Suppose in the naturally aspirated fuel, condition, if you put more amount of, if you put some fuel, the peak pressure becomes 60 bar. In this case, at 30 bar, if you put 1.3 times higher or 1.5 times higher fuel, the peak pressure will reach to 100 bar. So, now the limitation is that if your engine is designed to be naturally aspirated, you cannot keep on boosting because now the peak pressure has increased. And if your cylinder and cylinder head bolts and cylinder block, everything is not strong enough, you may damage the engine. If your piston connecting rod, crankshaft, it is not designed for withstanding 100 bar pressure, peak pressure, it will damage the engine. So, turbocharging and supercharging cannot be done on each engine. You have to see what kind of a boost your engine can tolerate. Okay, so, first you have to look at the structural design of the engine, what kind of peak pressures it can withstand, only then you have to decide what kind of boost I can give. If you overboost it, I told you that overboosting creates a lot of problem. Overboosting can in fact lead to failure of the engine. If you do the turbocharging or supercharging of an engine which is designed to be naturally aspirated, you have to be extremely careful, because now your factor of safety or design of each component does not take into account this boosting in the first place. However, on the other hand, if you have designed the engine to be working as a supercharged engine or turbocharged engine, you already take those forces, extra forces into account, and you design your engine, and then you can boost it safely to whatever limit you have designed the components.